In a courtroom where power was supposed to reign, the smug confidence of Officer Mark Harris crumbled in an instant. Harris, a well-dressed detective with a sharp suit and a permanent smirk, sat leaning back, fully convinced that nothing could touch him. The room was quiet, with only the sound of the judge's pen tapping and the occasional murmur from the prosecutor's side. Then, the unassuming woman named Karen Brown walked in. Dressed plainly, without makeup or jewelry, she was the picture of someone who blended into the background. She could have easily been mistaken for someone's aunt or neighbor, not someone capable of shaking the very foundation of the case. When Karen took the stand, her calm and measured demeanor contrasted with the smugness of Harris, who made a pointed remark, assuming she was just another uninformed witness. But when Karen answered the defense attorney's question about her involvement, she stunned everyone by revealing her true identity. Slowly, she pulled out a badge, declaring herself as a special agent with the FBI. The air shifted immediately as Harris' smirk disappeared. Karen had been working undercover for months, gathering evidence against Harris, who was involved in multiple illegal activities, including bribery and drug dealing. She calmly detailed her observations of him using his badge to manipulate situations and pocket bribes. And as she spoke, the courtroom fell silent, processing the weight of her testimony. In that moment, Karen's quiet strength and commitment to the truth shattered Harris' confident facade. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful forces aren't loud and brash, they're steady, patient, and resolute in exposing what others would prefer to stay hidden. In a courtroom filled with tense energy, Detective James Monroe sat with a cocky, almost arrogant smirk, believing that nothing could touch him. Dressed in a sharp suit, leaning back in his chair, he exuded confidence, certain that the system he had manipulated for years would protect him. To everyone in the room, Monroe was untouchable. A decorated officer who had evaded suspicion despite numerous complaints about his actions. But the truth was about to unravel in the most unexpected of ways. The defendant's side remained quiet as a woman, dressed plainly in a simple gray blouse and olive jacket, walked into the courtroom. She was not the type to immediately draw attention. Her appearance was unremarkable, no makeup, no flashy jewelry, just calm brown eyes scanning the room. Her name, when called, was Mariah Williams. As she took the stand, she didn't flinch or show any sign of nervousness. There were no awkward gestures or forced smiles. She simply sat with a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the cocky detective sitting at the defense table. The defense attorney, skeptical of her involvement, began the questioning. Monroe, who had no reason to believe this woman would be anything more than a witness, leaned back in his chair and whispered to the person next to him, making an offhand comment that barely anyone noticed. Mariah, however, did not flinch at the remark. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and she listened quietly as the attorney asked about the night of April 3rd. Her voice was calm, almost matter-of-fact, as she described the events of that evening. Mariah revealed that she had been working on an undercover assignment at the time, observing Detective Monroe interacting with two minors outside a liquor store. She mentioned how Monroe had searched one of their backpacks without cause and pocketed a small amount of cash, allowing both teens to walk free. The defense attorney scoffed at her words, questioning her claim, but Mariah's answer didn't waver. She casually mentioned that she had it all on video, and that's when Monroe's composure faltered, just slightly, enough for Mariah to notice. The tension in the room escalated as Mariah's next words hit like a bombshell. She didn't just stop at revealing what she had seen. She pulled out her official badge. With deliberate calm, she held it up for everyone to see and declared, "Special Agent Mariah Williams, Federal Bureau of Investigation." The shift in the room was immediate. Gone was the smug confidence of Monroe, replaced by a realization that everything he had done in the shadows had just come into the light. With unshakable poise, Mariah continued to explain that she had been working undercover in the same neighborhood where Monroe had operated for months. Her role was to gather evidence on a drug operation that had been shielded by individuals within the police department, none other than Detective Monroe himself. She calmly outlined his role in various illegal activities: bribery, evidence tampering, illegal searches, and even taking part in a conspiracy to distribute narcotics. The entire courtroom sat frozen, unable to process the information. Monroe's face, once confident, was now drained of color. His smirk had completely disappeared, replaced by a stunned expression that could barely mask the fear creeping in. Mariah's voice remained steady as she spoke directly to Monroe. She didn't need to raise her voice or make a grand gesture. Her quiet strength was all it took to completely shift the power dynamics in the room. The once untouchable cop had been exposed, not by an army of investigators, but by one woman who had the courage to expose the truth. As the prosecutor stood up to present the evidence, Mariah's calm testimony became the turning point of the trial. The prosecutor showed videos of Monroe taking bribes, planting evidence, and engaging in numerous illegal activities. For once, the system worked as it was supposed to. Monroe, who thought he was untouchable, was now facing the consequences of his actions. Mariah's dedication to her mission, her ability to remain composed under pressure, and her unwavering commitment to exposing the truth not only brought down a corrupt cop but sent a message to everyone in the room. No matter how powerful someone appears to be, the truth will always find a way to break through. It may take time, patience, and sacrifice, but eventually, justice will prevail. In the end, the real lesson from Mariah's actions is that power doesn't come from the position you hold or the badge you wear. It comes from your ability to stay true to your values and your commitment to making sure the truth is heard. No matter the cost, Mariah didn't need to shout or demand attention. She simply did her job, quietly, with integrity, and in doing so, she brought about the kind of justice that couldn't be ignored. In a courtroom where power and authority seemed to lie with Detective Kyle Renshaw, a well-dressed and arrogant cop, no one expected the quiet woman who walked in to be the one to change everything. Renshaw, sitting with his sharp suit and cocky smirk, exuded the kind of confidence that comes with years of bending the law without consequence. His demeanor was one of someone who believed he was untouchable, a man who had built a reputation of getting away with everything, from bribery to planting evidence. But the arrival of Mariah Tillman, an unassuming woman dressed plainly in a simple jacket and slacks, would prove him wrong. To the untrained eye, she looked like just another neighbor or a relative of someone involved in the case, a person easily overlooked in a room full of legal professionals and law enforcement officers. Mariah, however, was far from just a regular citizen. When she took the stand and was asked about what she witnessed on the night of April 3rd, her response seemed calm and routine. She explained that she had been on assignment as part of an ongoing investigation, observing Detective Renshaw's interactions with two minors outside a liquor store. She described how Renshaw had searched one of the teens' backpacks without cause, pocketed some cash, and then let them go free. Her account, though shocking, was not the bombshell. The real twist came when she revealed that she had the entire exchange on video. The courtroom shifted, but the most dramatic moment was yet to come. As the defense attorney dismissed her claim with a scoff, Mariah calmly reached into her jacket, pulling out a badge. Special Agent Mariah Tillman with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. The courtroom air shifted dramatically in that instant. Renshaw's smirk faltered, his posture slumped slightly, and the arrogant swagger he had carried so confidently evaporated. Mariah was no ordinary witness. She was an undercover federal agent who had been working for months to expose Renshaw's involvement in a network of corruption that had ties deep within the police department. For months, Renshaw had been using his position to tip off drug dealers, manipulate evidence, and protect criminal activities, all under the radar. Mariah's composed revelation stunned the courtroom into silence. With unwavering poise, Mariah continued to explain her role in the operation. She had spent the last 8 months undercover in the Roosevelt Heights neighborhood, building evidence on a drug operation that Renshaw had been protecting from within his department. Her investigation had turned up overwhelming evidence of his involvement in criminal activity, including bribery, conspiracy, and drug trafficking. The fact that someone within the police department was able to operate with such impunity was nothing new. But the fact that Mariah had been working to bring him down, while posing as an ordinary woman in the neighborhood, was the key to exposing his corruption. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief as Mariah, in her quiet and steady way, laid out the facts. She recalled how she had worked under the cover identity of Raina Lawson, a fake persona that allowed her to blend into the neighborhood and observe Renshaw without drawing attention. Over the course of months, Mariah recorded illegal transactions and interactions between Renshaw and drug dealers. She had seen him exchange money for drugs, intimidate minors, and act with complete impunity, knowing that no one would challenge him. But Mariah, with nothing more than her resolve and a recording device, began to unravel the web of corruption that Renshaw had spun. As Mariah's testimony continued, the gravity of what she had uncovered became evident. She didn't just expose Renshaw for the crimes he had committed. She exposed the deeply rooted corruption within the Fresno Police Department. With each video clip, audio recording, and witness statement, the case against Renshaw grew stronger. The once confident detective, who had scoffed at the idea of being caught, now found himself facing charges that would unravel his career, and potentially his freedom. For Mariah, this was the culmination of months of dangerous work. But for Renshaw, it was the moment everything he had carefully hidden in the shadows came crashing down. In the end, the courtroom became a symbol of the power of truth. Mariah's composed and determined approach to exposing Renshaw's crimes sent a powerful message. She didn't need to shout or fight back in anger. She simply relied on the strength of the truth to carry her. Her courage to stand up against a system that had protected Renshaw for so long was a reminder that justice isn't always loud or immediate. Sometimes, it's quiet and steady, and sometimes it's delivered by a woman who refuses to let corruption go unchecked. Mariah's story proves that no matter how powerful or untouchable someone may seem, the truth will eventually surface. And when it does, it will be impossible to ignore. In a courtroom filled with the tense hum of whispered conversations, Detective James Monroe sat back in his chair, exuding an air of superiority. He wore a sharp suit, his tie slightly loosened, as if to signal that he didn't have to answer to anyone. His smirk seemed permanent, the confidence of someone who believed he was untouchable. Monroe had been a decorated cop for years, with commendations that obscured the darker side of his career. Despite whispers of corruption and the occasional complaint, he had always managed to evade serious consequences. The room, though small, was full of those who mattered: the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the few spectators who sat in the back. No one, however, expected the quiet woman who entered next to challenge everything Monroe thought he knew about power and control. Her name was Mariah Tillman, and her entrance couldn't have been more unassuming. Dressed in a simple olive jacket, gray top, and slacks, Mariah looked more like someone's neighbor than a key player in a high-stakes legal drama. No jewelry, no makeup, just calm, focused eyes that scanned the room with quiet confidence. She took the stand without hesitation, walking directly to the witness chair, her demeanor calm and unshaken. To most people, she seemed like another witness, maybe a bystander, someone who would provide a quick answer and be dismissed. But to Detective Monroe, she was just a brief interruption in his game, a game he had been playing for years, and one he believed no one could disrupt. As the defense attorney began his questioning, Monroe leaned back in his chair, whispering to a colleague with a sneer. Must have brought her off the block. His words were loud enough for several people to hear. But Mariah didn't flinch. She remained composed, not reacting to the jab, and waited for the questioning to continue. When asked about her connection to the case, Mariah's voice was steady and even. She didn't let the defense attorney's dismissive tone rattle her as she explained that While she didn't have any personal relationships with the defendant or anyone involved, she had witnessed something that night that she couldn't ignore. Mariah went on to describe what she had seen on the night of April 3rd, detailing her observations of Detective Monroe interacting with two minors outside a liquor store. She calmly described how Monroe had searched one of the minors' backpacks without cause, taken a small amount of cash, and let the teens go free. The defense attorney scoffed, dismissing her claim as absurd. But Mariah's response was unshaken. "I have it on video," she said, her calm voice cutting through the room. That was when everything changed. Monroe, who had been lounging in his chair with confidence, suddenly tensed. A flicker of unease passed across his face, but he quickly masked it with his usual arrogance. But Mariah was far from finished. With a calm that was almost unnerving, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a badge. She held it up for the room to see and said, "Special Agent Mariah Tillman, United States Drug Enforcement Administration." The entire room froze. The air seemed to change instantly, the power dynamics shifting in an instant. Monroe's arrogant smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Mariah, once an unassuming figure, had revealed herself as an undercover federal agent who had spent the last 8 months working to expose the corrupt activities of Detective Monroe. For the first time, Monroe was no longer the man in control. Mariah's quiet confidence had flipped the script. With unshakable poise, Mariah continued to lay out the details of her undercover operation, describing how Monroe had been involved in protecting drug dealers, planting evidence, taking bribes, and using his badge to intimidate people. She detailed the months she had spent gathering evidence, including video footage, witness statements, and audio recordings. All of it was carefully documented. All of it aimed at one target, Detective Monroe. What had started as a covert operation to expose a drug operation in the neighborhood had turned into a deep dive into Monroe's corruption within the police department. The more Mariah spoke, the clearer it became that Monroe, once untouchable, had finally been exposed. The courtroom, which had once seemed like his domain, had shifted entirely. The prosecutor, once reserved, allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The defense attorney was frozen, unable to make a sound. Monroe, who had once made everyone around him uncomfortable with his arrogance, was now the one whose confidence had crumbled. Mariah had done what years of internal reports and investigations had failed to do. In one moment, she had revealed the full extent of his corruption, and the walls he had built around himself were suddenly crumbling. For Mariah, this was not just about taking down a corrupt cop. It was about exposing a system that allowed people like Monroe to operate with impunity. She had worked quietly, patiently, with no intention of making a scene. And yet, in a room where power and arrogance had reigned, it was her quiet determination, her commitment to justice, that had shifted everything. The lesson was clear. Real power doesn't come from dominating others or manipulating the system. It comes from staying true to your values, quietly exposing the truth, and doing the work that others are too afraid or unwilling to do. Sometimes, it's the quietest voices that make the biggest impact. In the middle of a courtroom, where confidence and power were usually associated with sharp suits and hardened attitudes, Detective David Carter seemed to have it all. Sitting back in his chair, his pinstriped suit impeccable and his smirk as permanent as his swagger, Carter exuded an aura of someone who believed he was untouchable. He had been in the force for years, and his record was flawless, or so it seemed. To the outside world, he was a decorated officer. But behind his badges, there were whispers of corruption, deceit, and a dark network of criminal ties that no one dared to expose. He was a man who had learned to operate in the shadows, skating just under the radar of suspicion. But today, that shadow was about to vanish in an instant, and the truth was finally going to catch up with him. As Carter lounged in his chair, seemingly in control, a woman entered the room, a quiet, unassuming figure named Maya Owens. She was nothing like the other witnesses who had appeared before. dressed plainly in a modest blouse and trousers. With no makeup or jewelry, Maya could have been anyone from a neighborhood resident to an office worker. To Carter, she was just another face in the crowd, not someone who could threaten the control he had over his world. As she took the stand, there was nothing remarkable about her at first glance, but Maya had something that Carter never expected: a steely determination and the courage to stand up to someone who had long evaded justice. She wasn't there to tell stories, she was there to expose the truth. When asked about her connection to the case, Maya's voice was calm, almost clinical, as she described the events of the night in question. She recounted seeing Detective Carter engaging with two minors outside a corner store, one of them holding a backpack. She explained how Carter had searched the bag without cause, pocketing a small amount of cash before sending the teens on their way. At first, her testimony seemed like any other. It was routine. But then she dropped a bombshell. She had it all on video. The courtroom shifted. Carter's smirk faltered, just for a moment, but it was enough for Maya to notice. She had caught him, and now, she had the evidence to prove it. But the real shock came when Maya revealed the truth about herself. "I've been working undercover," she said, her voice steady as ever, "as a federal agent for the past year. My name is Maya Owens, and I'm with the Drug Enforcement Administration." In that moment, the entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Carter, who had spent years playing a game where no one could touch him, suddenly found himself exposed, his face drained of color as Maya continued, calmly detailing how she had been investigating a drug operation for months, one that had been protected by the likes of him. She had been working not only to uncover the illegal activities of the dealers in the area but to expose Carter's involvement in protecting them from the law. She described the work she had done: living under a fake identity, gathering evidence against Carter, documenting his corrupt dealings. Over the months, she had seen him take bribes, plant evidence, and allow drug deals to take place, all while wearing a badge and holding the power of the law in his hands. Maya had seen it all, and now, in front of everyone in the room, she was exposing him for who he really was. Carter, who had always been so careful to cover his tracks, had underestimated the quiet woman who was now unraveling his life in front of a courtroom full of people. The moment was a pivotal one. The courtroom, once charged with the tension of the trial, now buzzed with disbelief. The defense, which had been so sure of Carter's innocence, was left with no arguments. The prosecutor, once uncertain, now had the upper hand. Maya's calm, composed testimony had shattered the illusion of invincibility that Carter had built for himself. It wasn't just the video evidence or the undercover work that took him down. It was her steady resolve and her commitment to justice. Maya had spent months working quietly, gathering the pieces of evidence, patiently waiting for the moment when everything would fall into place. And when that moment came, she stood strong, unshaken by the power that Carter believed he still wielded. For Carter, the consequences were immediate. His smug confidence was replaced by fear. The courtroom that had once felt like his domain now felt foreign, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of the evidence Maya had presented. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that Maya's patience and quiet strength had exposed the corruption that had been allowed to fester for so long. The lesson was simple: true power doesn't come from dominance or intimidation. It comes from the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Maya had done what so many couldn't. She had exposed the truth. And in doing so, she had dismantled a man who thought he could never be touched. In a courtroom filled with tension, Detective John Hamilton sat in his chair, leaning back with a casual air of confidence. His tailored suit, his relaxed posture, and the cocky smirk on his face suggested that he was above reproach. Someone who had navigated the system for years without facing any consequences. Detective Hamilton had always been careful. His record was impeccable, his demeanor unflappable, and he had learned how to keep his dirty secrets hidden beneath the surface. He had protected criminals, planted evidence, and taken bribes, but his reputation as a decorated officer had kept him safe from the law. That was until a quiet, unassuming woman named Sarah Lawson walked into the courtroom and disrupted everything he thought he knew about power. Sarah, dressed in an olive jacket and plain slacks, appeared to be an ordinary woman, someone who blended in with the crowd. No makeup, no flashy jewelry, no airs of superiority, just calm, steady eyes and a quiet confidence. As she took the stand, she was met with the usual skepticism. To most people in the room, Sarah was just another witness, someone who would offer a brief statement before being dismissed. Detective Hamilton, feeling secure in his position, made a dismissive comment under his breath, loud enough for a few people to hear. "Must have brought her off the street," he said, a joke that fell flat. But Sarah didn't flinch, she didn't react, she simply folded her hands in her lap and waited for the questioning to begin. When Sarah was asked about the events of the night in question, she responded calmly. She detailed her observations of Detective Hamilton interacting with two minors outside a corner store. She described how Hamilton had searched one of the teens' backpacks without cause, taken a small amount of cash, and let the teens walk free. The defense attorney scoffed, questioning her credibility, but Sarah's response was unwavering. "I have it on video," she said, causing a flicker of panic to cross Hamilton's face. He tried to hide it, but Sarah had already noticed. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone had expected a routine witness statement, but Sarah was about to reveal something much bigger. With deliberate calmness, Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a badge, revealing her true identity. "Special Agent Sarah Lawson, Federal Bureau of Investigation," she announced, her voice steady and clear. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Hamilton's smirk disappeared, his relaxed posture stiffening as he realized that his carefully built facade was crumbling. Sarah wasn't just a witness. She was an undercover agent who had spent months gathering evidence on Hamilton's involvement in a network of corruption and crime. She had been working tirelessly to expose his role in protecting drug dealers, planting evidence, and engaging in criminal activities under the guise of law enforcement. Sarah's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Hamilton's mounting panic. She didn't need to shout or make a scene. Her quiet resolve and unwavering commitment to justice were enough to expose the truth. As she continued to lay out the evidence, including video footage, audio recordings, and witness statements, the courtroom was left stunned. Hamilton had been operating for years with the belief that no one could touch him. But Sarah's methodical work, conducted in the shadows, had brought everything into the light. Her calm testimony, presented without fanfare, had destroyed his credibility in a matter of minutes. The prosecutor, once uncertain, now had the upper hand, and the defense had no leg to stand on. Hamilton's confidence had evaporated, replaced by the unmistakable feeling of fear. He had never expected a quiet woman, someone who seemed so ordinary, to be the one to expose him. But Sarah had done just that, and in doing so, she had dismantled his career, his reputation, and the network of corruption he had spent years building. The power dynamic in the room shifted completely. Sarah, with her unflinching commitment to the truth, had brought down a man who had thought he was untouchable. The lesson in Sarah's story is clear. True strength doesn't come from dominance or the ability to manipulate the system. It comes from the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the odds are against you. Sarah's quiet determination and refusal to back down in the face of corruption were the driving forces behind her success. She didn't need to dominate or manipulate, she simply needed to be truthful. And in doing so, she proved that sometimes the most powerful forces are the quiet ones. The world may often reward loudness and aggression, but Sarah's story reminds us that strength lies in integrity, patience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. In the tense atmosphere of a courtroom, Detective Thomas Blake sat with an air of unshakable confidence, fully convinced that his years of manipulative tactics had made him untouchable. His sharp suit and carefully cultivated smirk painted the picture of a man who had avoided the consequences of his actions for far too long. Blake had been involved in numerous shady dealings, bribery, evidence tampering, and manipulating situations for his own gain, but his reputation within the force had kept him above suspicion. He was an officer whose actions went unchecked, not because they were unnoticed, but because no one dared to confront him. Today, however, everything was about to change. Enter Maya Thompson, a woman whose unassuming presence stood in stark contrast to Blake's cocky demeanor. Maya, dressed in simple attire, no makeup, no jewelry, looked more like someone's mother or neighbor than a witness in a high-stakes case. She moved with a quiet confidence, her brown eyes scanning the courtroom with a calm that did not betray the gravity of what was about to unfold. When her name was called, she walked to the witness stand with unwavering determination. The defense attorney, unimpressed by her plain appearance, began to question her. Blake, certain he had nothing to fear, leaned back in his chair, whispering a snide comment to his colleague, dismissing Maya as nothing more than another irrelevant witness. But what Blake and the others in the courtroom didn't expect was that Maya was not an ordinary witness. She was a special agent with the FBI, working undercover to bring Blake's criminal activities to light. When Maya revealed her true identity, the room went silent. With calm authority, she explained that she had been investigating a major drug operation and had discovered that Blake, in his capacity as a detective, had been aiding and protecting the criminals involved. For months, she had worked undercover, adopting a false identity, living among the very criminals Blake was protecting. Maya had seen Blake's illegal actions firsthand: bribery, planting evidence, and even taking kickbacks from drug dealers in exchange for shielding them from the law. She had gathered irrefutable evidence, videos, audio recordings, and witness testimonies. Each piece of evidence laid out Blake's complicity. And as Maya spoke, it became clear that the man who once thought he was above the law was now being exposed for what he truly was: a corrupt cop who had manipulated the system to his advantage. The transformation in the courtroom was palpable. The smugness that had once defined Blake's presence was now replaced with fear. He sat up straighter, his confident posture crumbling as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. His empire of corruption, carefully built over years, was falling apart in front of him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Maya's steady, unwavering testimony had stripped away his defenses. She didn't need to shout or make grand gestures. Her calm, methodical presentation of the facts was enough to unravel everything Blake had worked to conceal. Her quiet strength and commitment to the truth exposed him for the fraud he was. As the prosecutor presented the damning evidence, videos of Blake taking bribes, clips of him engaging in illegal activities, and audio of his shady dealings, Blake's arrogance and sense of invulnerability vanished. What he had once viewed as a minor inconvenience, the testimony of an undercover agent, was now the nail in his coffin. The courtroom that had once felt like his domain was now a place where his lies and corruption were exposed for all to see. The justice that had long eluded him was finally catching up. In the end, it wasn't just the evidence or the paperwork that brought Blake down. It was Maya's unshakable commitment to exposing the truth. She had spent months working in the shadows, patiently building her case against a man who thought he was untouchable. And when the moment came, she didn't need to raise her voice or make a scene. Her quiet, methodical pursuit of justice was what made the difference. The real lesson here is profound. True power isn't about dominating others or manipulating the system. It's about the courage to stand firm, to expose the truth no matter the cost. Maya didn't just take down a corrupt cop. She showed everyone in that room that no matter how high you climb or how much power you wield, truth and integrity will always prevail. In a courtroom where power was expected to rest in the hands of law enforcement, Detective Michael Larson sat smugly, exuding confidence that no one could touch him. His sharp suit, his perfectly loosened tie, and the casual way he leaned back in his chair made it clear that he thought he was untouchable. Larson had been a respected detective, with a series of commendations to his name, and years of manipulative and corrupt dealings that had yet to catch up with him. He was used to skirting the law and bending the rules, thinking that his position made him invulnerable. But in this courtroom, his self-assuredness would quickly dissolve under the weight of a quiet woman who, unbeknownst to him, was about to expose the depth of his crimes. Her name was Rachel Carter, and when she entered the courtroom, she was anything but remarkable at first glance. Dressed simply in a modest olive jacket and gray pants, Rachel looked like someone you could easily overlook, a neighbor, a concerned citizen, someone who had no business in a room full of legal professionals. She didn't wear makeup or jewelry, and her demeanor was one of calm confidence, not the type to command attention at first glance. But as Rachel took the stand, there was something about her that stood out, something that made Detective Larson's arrogance seem more like a mask than an impenetrable armor. The defense attorney began his questioning, but Rachel's response was cool and steady. She recounted what she had witnessed on the night of April 3rd. Speaking without fear or hesitation, Rachel described how she had seen Detective Larson interacting with two minors outside a local liquor store. She told the court how Larson had searched one of the teens' backpacks without any probable cause, taken cash from it, and then allowed both teens to walk away free. The defense attorney, not yet recognizing the gravity of Rachel's testimony, scoffed and tried to discredit her. But Rachel's next words stopped the courtroom in its tracks. "I have it on video," she said. Larson's smirk faltered. Just for a moment, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. But no one missed it. Rachel didn't let his discomfort shake her, and the courtroom seemed to shift as her calm assurance took control. She didn't immediately dive into more details. Instead, she revealed the truth that would bring everything to light. "I've been working undercover," she said, her voice steady. "I'm Special Agent Rachel Carter, and I'm with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The revelation was like a punch to the gut. In a moment, everything changed. Larson, who had once believed he was above the law, now found himself exposed. His bravado evaporated as Rachel continued, explaining how she had spent the last 8 months working undercover to investigate the very corruption Larson had been orchestrating from within the police department. Rachel revealed how Larson had been protecting drug dealers, taking bribes, planting evidence, and manipulating situations to his advantage. Every word Rachel spoke, every piece of evidence she provided, cut deeper into the illusion of Larson's invulnerability. The courtroom had fallen silent, with even the judge now paying full attention. Rachel's testimony was delivered with precision, unflinching in the face of Larson's growing panic. She had spent months building this case, collecting video footage, audio recordings, and witness statements, all of which painted a clear picture of Larson's corruption. As she laid it all bare, the prosecutor's side finally had the upper hand. It was clear that Rachel had done what many had tried and failed to do. She had taken down a crooked cop who had evaded justice for years. In that moment, the true power dynamic of the courtroom had shifted. Larson, once the dominant figure in the room, was now powerless. Rachel, despite her calm exterior, had shattered the illusion of control that Larson had worked so hard to maintain. The courtroom had witnessed the collapse of someone who thought they were untouchable. And it wasn't with force or loud accusations, but with quiet strength and an unwavering commitment to justice. Rachel had done the work, slow, steady, methodical, and in doing so, she had exposed the corruption that had allowed Larson to flourish. This story highlights a key lesson. Power doesn't always come from the loudest voices or the most visible authority figures. Sometimes, true power comes from the quiet and steady pursuit of truth. It is in those moments when you choose to stand firm, speak the truth, and remain unshaken, even when those around you wield authority, that real change happens. Larson thought he had the upper hand because of his position, but Rachel proved that justice doesn't always need to make noise. Sometimes, it just needs to be heard. In a small courtroom, Detective Samuel Lawson exuded an air of invincibility. his smirk unwavering as he lounged in his seat, confident that nothing could touch him. A decorated officer with years of service, he believed his reputation was untouchable. He had manipulated the system too many times to be caught now. Dressed in a crisp suit and tie, Lawson was the epitome of authority in the room. His presence alone commanded respect, and anyone who had crossed him in the past knew better than to challenge his power. The judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney all seemed to recognize that, but everything was about to change when a quiet, unassuming woman named Leah Taylor walked into the room. Leah wasn't what anyone expected. She wore a simple olive green jacket, paired with slacks and no makeup, her hair neatly pulled back. To the casual observer, she looked like an everyday citizen, someone who could easily be mistaken for a neighbor or an aunt. As she walked up to the witness stand, no one could have known the quiet storm she was about to unleash. Leah's calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the brash confidence of Detective Lawson, who believed that this was just another routine case where his influence would go unchallenged. But Leah wasn't there to simply answer questions. She was there to change the game completely. When asked about her connection to the case, Leah responded calmly, explaining that she had been working undercover for the last several months. The atmosphere shifted as she went on to describe a night when she had witnessed Detective Lawson engaging in illegal activity outside a local store. She had observed Lawson interacting with minors, searching their belongings without cause, and taking cash from one of them before letting them go free. Her testimony was shocking, but it was what came next that truly stunned the room. Leah revealed that she had the entire exchange on video. That's when the courtroom took notice, and the first crack appeared in Lawson's confident facade. But it wasn't the video evidence that truly shattered the power dynamics in the room. It was when Leah pulled out her badge. With a steady hand, she held up her DEA identification, revealing herself as a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration. The room fell silent. Lawson, who had been lounging in his seat with smug arrogance, now sat rigid, his face draining of color as he realized that he had just been exposed. For months, Leah had been working undercover, gathering evidence on a drug operation that was being shielded by corrupt officers in the police department, including Detective Lawson. Leah's composed and methodical approach to the situation contrasted sharply with Lawson's erratic and unflappable attitude. As she laid out the details of her investigation, it became clear that she had been tracking Lawson's involvement in criminal activities for months, activities that included bribery, drug trafficking, and the manipulation of evidence. But what truly struck the courtroom wasn't just the incriminating evidence she had gathered. It was her unwavering strength in the face of someone who had long believed himself untouchable. She had infiltrated a network of corruption and was now revealing it all in front of a courtroom full of people. Detective Lawson, who had spent his career controlling the narrative, now found himself helpless as Leah calmly detailed how he had used his badge to cover up criminal activities. The once dominant figure in the room was now reduced to a shadow of himself. A man who had underestimated the quiet strength of one person willing to expose the truth. As Leah's testimony continued, the prosecutor stood with confidence, presenting video footage, witness statements, and records that further solidified Lawson's involvement in the illegal activities. For the first time, the evidence against him was irrefutable. Leah had done what years of internal investigations could not. She had exposed the truth. And she had done it with grace, determination, and the courage to stand firm. This moment in the courtroom was a powerful reminder that true strength doesn't lie in loud displays of power or in controlling the narrative. It lies in the ability to stay grounded, calm, and true to one's values, especially when facing adversity. Leah's quiet determination had brought down a man who had thought he was invincible. And in doing so, she had shown the courtroom, and the world, that sometimes the most powerful act is simply telling the truth. The lesson was clear. Power can be fleeting, but integrity and the courage to stand up for what is right are what truly matter. Leah Taylor, without the need for fanfare or dramatics, had made an impact that would be remembered for years to come. In the middle of a tense courtroom, where power dynamics were at play and the air was thick with anticipation, Detective Victor Hughes sat confidently, exuding an aura of invincibility. Dressed in his best suit, with a slight smirk on his face, he was a man who had seen it all and thought he had outsmarted the system. He had been a decorated officer for years, with a track record that seemed impeccable on paper. Behind closed doors, however, the whispers of corruption had followed him: bribery, drug deals, evidence tampering, all hidden beneath the surface. But today, everything he thought he had buried was about to surface, and it would come from someone who didn't fit the mold of a typical whistleblower. As Hughes sat with his legs casually crossed, waiting for the case to unfold, a woman named Eva Carter walked into the room. She was quiet, unassuming, and dressed plainly in a simple blouse and slacks. At first glance, she could have been anyone: a mother, a neighbor, someone who had stumbled into the courtroom to witness a case that didn't concern her. But Eva wasn't just a witness. She was a federal agent, working undercover to expose the very crimes Hughes thought he had buried for good. As she stepped up to the witness stand, there was a calm in her demeanor that was impossible to ignore. Her eyes were steady, and her voice unwavering, as she calmly described how she had been observing Detective Hughes for months, gathering evidence on his illegal activities. Eva's testimony was nothing short of a revelation. She described a series of events, including a night when she had witnessed Hughes, in full uniform, engaging in illegal activities outside a local store. She detailed how he had searched the backpack of a teenager without cause, pocketing cash, and then allowing the young boy to walk free. As she spoke, Hughes' smirk began to fade. The confidence he once exuded was slipping away, replaced by something he hadn't expected: fear. Eva didn't stop there. With quiet precision, she revealed her true identity. "I'm Special Agent Eva Carter, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation," she said, pulling out her badge for everyone to see. The room shifted in that instant. Hughes, who had always operated in the shadows, now found himself exposed in front of everyone. His world was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Eva's story wasn't just about the corruption she had uncovered within the police force. It was about the quiet, determined strength of one person who refused to let the truth remain hidden. Over the past few months, Eva had risked everything to collect evidence, document Hughes' illegal dealings, and uncover the extent of his involvement in the criminal underworld. She had lived undercover, adopting a fake identity and integrating herself into the community where Hughes had been operating. Every day, she had witnessed the way Hughes manipulated the system, using his badge to shield himself from the consequences of his actions. But Eva, despite the danger and the stakes, never wavered. She kept her focus on the truth, on the need to expose the corruption that had festered for so long. As the courtroom sat in stunned silence, Eva's words cut through the air like a beacon of hope. She had done what others had failed to do. She had brought a corrupt cop to justice. And in that moment, Eva showed the world that true power doesn't come from the ability to intimidate or control. It comes from the courage to stand up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. It comes from the quiet strength of someone who is willing to risk everything for the truth, no matter how difficult or dangerous the journey may be. The emotional lesson here is clear. Courage and integrity are not defined by the noise we make or the position we hold. They are defined by the quiet moments when we choose to do what is right, even when no one is watching. Eva's story is a testament to the fact that one person, armed only with the truth, can bring about real change. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from shouting the loudest but from standing firm in our beliefs and knowing that the truth, no matter how long it takes, will eventually prevail. If this story moved you, if it made you reflect on the power of standing up for what is right, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose integrity over convenience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about real courage and the quiet moments that define us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There are more powerful stories on the way, and I want you to be a part of the conversation. Your voice matters. Let's keep this discussion going together.